Hello, my name is Julia Jones, and this is my Unit 4 History 112 digital project on the Rwandan Genocide. First, where is Rwanda? Rwanda is one of the smallest countries on the African mainland. It is located in Central Africa and is bordered by Uganda in the north, Tanzania to the east, Burundi in the south, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the west. The capital is the city of Kigali. Also known as the land of 1,000 hills, Rwanda has 5 volcanoes, 23 lakes, and numerous rivers, some forming the source of the River Nile. The vegetation ranges from dense equatorial forests in the northwest of the country to tropical savanna in the east. In Rwanda, the great animals of the wild are protected from poachers and roam free in the vast national parks. The Volcanoes National Park in the Virunga Volcanic Mountains, with its high-altitude forests, is world famous for mountain gorillas, which is Rwanda's main tourist attraction. The park is teeming with wildlife, both large and small, while Lake Kivu to the west offers beautiful beaches and a group of islands. The highlands of Rwanda and its southern neighbor, Burundi, are the last part of Africa to be reached by Europeans in the colonial expansion of the late 19th century. Local tradition tells us that the Batwa, more commonly known as Twa, ancestors were the first inhabitants of Rwanda tens of thousands of years ago, and used to make their living in the country's lush forests as hunter-gatherers. Several hundreds of years ago, the Hutu and Tutsi arrived and began to develop more and more of the land. The Hutu served as farmers and the Tutsi as cattle owners. The Tutsis, originally from the upper reaches of the Nile, won dominance over the Hutus. Historical records begin with the reign of Rwabugiri, who comes to the throne in 1860 and eventually controls a region as large as the present Rwanda. His realm is organized on a feudal basis, with the Tutsi as the aristocracy and the Hutu as their vassals. From 1885, Karl Peters, a German explorer, had begun claiming areas of East Africa for Germany. The eastern coastline proved relatively easy to conquer, but conquest of the inland areas was more difficult as large parts were still very much unexplored. Gustav Adolf Graf von Gotzen, a German explorer, led an expedition to claim these hinterlands, and in 1894 he visited the court of Rwabugiri. In 1895, Rwabugiri died, and with Rwanda in turmoil over the succession, the Germans moved in to claim the region for the Kaiser. At the same time, they claimed Burundi, the separate kingdom to the south. The entire area was treated as one colony, and it was to be known as Rwanda-Urundi. German rule in these colonies is indirect, achieved mainly by placing agents at the court of various local rulers. So German influence is not yet extensive when the region is taken abruptly from their hands after the outbreak of World War I in 1914. When Germany invades Belgium at the start of World War I, the Belgians retaliate in a smaller way in Central Africa. Belgian troops move east from the Belgian Congo to occupy Rwanda-Urundi in 1916. After World War I, the League of Nations confirms the existing state of affairs, granting Belgium a mandate to administer the colony. From 1925 onward, Rwanda-Urundi is linked with the neighboring Belgian Congo. However, colonial rule takes a very different form in the two territories. The administration of the Congo is centered in Brussels, but in Rwanda-Urundi it is left in the hands of the Tutsi aristocracy. Indeed, the Belgians observing the distinction between Tutsi and Hutu make it the very basis of their colonial system. The Belgians showed preference towards the Tutsis, who they classified as lighter in skin, taller, and with more Eurocentric features. The Hutu are subject to the forced labor, and it is the Tutsi who supervise them at their tasks. From 1933 onward, everyone in Rwanda-Urundi is issued with a racial identity card, defining them as Hutu or Tutsi. The Hutu population makes up about 85%, and the Tutsi population makes up about 14%. The remaining 1% are the Twa, the remnants of the original indigenous peoples of this area. This Belgian attitude set in stone the distinction between the two groups, and it favored one of them, and prepared the grounds for future violence. Interestingly enough, in earlier times, there had never been any racially based massacres occurring between the two groups. The predictable occasion for an outbreak is the rush towards independence in the late 1950s. In Rwanda, ethnic problems are more immediately evident than in Burundi. The outbreak of a nationwide campaign of Hutu violence against Tutsis leads many Tutsis to flee from Rwanda, including the Mwamwe, or the king. The two parts of Rwanda-Burundi become independent in July of 1962. There is pressure from the UN to federate as a single nation, but both opt to go their separate ways. Rwanda, in which ethnic violence has continued during 1960 and 1961, becomes a republic. The spelling of the name is changed from Ruanda to Rwanda. Burundi, by contrast, becomes independent as a constitutional monarchy, but again with a change of name to Burundi. The first presidential election in Rwanda is won by Gregoire Kayibanda. His party is called the Party for Hutu Emancipation, and it is what is to become the central plank of government policy. In the spirit of his movement, cockroaches becomes the favorite slang name for Tutsis. The killing of these cockroaches is soon an all too familiar feature of Rwandan life. In December of 1963, several hundred Tutsi guerrillas enter southern Rwanda from Burundi. They advance towards Kigali but are eliminated by the Rwandan army. This event prompts the government to declare a state of emergency, emphasizing the need to clear the bush of subversive elements. Within days, some 14,000 Tutsis are massacred in the southern province of Kigangoro, in a coordinated campaign described as the most horrible and systematic massacre since the Holocaust. In 1973, Kayibanda is removed from power by a group of army officers who replace him with a major general named Juvenal Habyarimana. Habyarimana remains in power for 21 years, running a military dictatorship. But his Hutu ethnic policy creates an increasing problem on Rwandan frontiers. Over the borders, there are vast numbers of mainly Tutsi refugees. As time passes, they are increasingly unwelcome in their host countries. Efforts are made to send them home, but Rwanda rejects them. These exiles form the group RPF, or the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which is committed to an armed struggle against Habyarimana's regime. The nucleus of the RPF is Tutsi officers serving in the Ugandan army. On a prearranged date of 1st of October 1990, they desert from the army with their equipment and move south over the border into Rwanda. It is a minor invasion which eventually, against all odds, puts an end to Habyarimana's regime. But it also provokes one of the century's most appalling acts of genocide. President Habyarimana is able to repel this initial RPF invasion of northeastern Rwanda in October of 1990. But this event provides the pretext for a new wave of Tutsi persecution within Rwanda. The country's most fervently racist newspaper publishes in December the Hutu 10 Commandments. This is a litany of hatred, attributing dishonesty and treachery not only to all Tutsis, but also to any Hutu who befriends them. The 8th commandment, quoted at the time more often than any other, is Hutus must stop having mercy on the Tutsis. In 1991, a name is coined for this new level of ethnic triumphalism, Hutu power. To ensure the effectiveness of Hutu power, Habyarimana's government begins to recruit Hutu youth militias. These become known as the Interahamwe, meaning those who attack together. These men gather together to perfect the skills of wielding machetes, to set fire to houses, and to draw up lists of local Tutsis and any Hutu sympathizers. In this mood, ethnic violence increases steadily, and in March of 1992, Radio Rwanda spreads a deliberately false rumor that a Tutsi plot to massacre Hutus has been discovered. By 1992, President Habyarimana is beginning to disappoint his extremist supporters. Having failed to suppress the guerrillas of the RPF and under extreme international pressure to come to terms with them, he begins to negotiate. The news that he has agreed to a ceasefire provokes a new wave of attacks on the Tutsis. Over the next year, the peace process continues, alienating the president even further from Hutu power. In August of 1993, Habyarimana signs a peace treaty with the RPF, officially bringing the war to an end. But the terms of the treaty go much further than that. Habyarimana accepts the right of return for all Rwanda's refugees, the merging of the RPF with the National Army, and a transitional period leading up to the elections and a democratic government. During this period, power will reside with a provisional government in which, most startling of all, the RPF will be represented. UN forces will be invited into Rwanda to secure this process. These concessions seemed outrageous to the Interahamwe. On the 6th of April 1994, a rocket, most likely fired by Hutu extremists, brings down a plane. In it are two presidents, Habyarimana and the head of the neighboring state, Burundi. The assassination of the president, even if secretly contrived by extremist Hutus, is the immediate pretext for the orgy of Hutu extremism whipped up over the next weeks. Radio broadcasts urge people to do their duty and to seek out the Tutsis and Tutsi sympathizers living among them in their streets or villages. Eliminate the cockroach is the message. On April 29th, the state radio announces that May 5th is to be the cleanup day, by which the capital Kigali must be cleansed of Tutsis. One notorious broadcast even suggests a necessary precaution in the interests of thoroughness. Unborn children should be ripped from the wombs of dead Tutsi women who are pregnant. The idea is to eliminate the next generation of Tutsis. In this atmosphere, the Interahamwe and a large proportion of the ordinary Hutu population of Rwanda go to work with a frenzy probably unparalleled in human history. Between April and July, an estimated 800,000 Rwandans are slaughtered, and this is without the modern aids of mass destruction. The characteristic tool in Rwanda's genocide is the everyday machete. Although the UN forces are present by now, they are powerless to intervene. Meanwhile, the RPF resumes fighting, and civil war rages alongside the genocide. By early July, RPF forces have gained control over most of the country, including Kigali. In the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide, many prominent figures in the international community lamented the outside world's general obliviousness to the situation and its failure to act in order to prevent the atrocities from taking place. As former UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali told the PBS News program Frontline, the failure of Rwanda is 10 times greater than the failure of Yugoslavia, because in Yugoslavia, the international community was involved. In Rwanda, nobody was interested and nobody cared. A famous movie regarding the genocide called Hotel Rwanda has been made based on the true story of hotel general manager Paul Rusesabagina, a Hutu who saved approximately 1,200 lives during the genocide. The post-genocide Rwandan government pursued a policy of unity and reconciliation, adopting a new constitution, creating programs to empower women, and increasing economic growth and stability. While credited with stabilizing the country, the government continues to face accusations of committing human rights abuses inside Rwanda against political opponents and in the neighboring Democratic Republic of the Congo. With the flight of roughly 1 million refugees, including perpetrators of the genocide, the epicenter of violence shifted from Rwanda to Zaire, now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Beginning in 1996, the DRC turned into the battlegrounds for continuing armed conflict between Rwanda's new government and the perpetrators of the 1994 crimes who fled there. It is estimated that more than 5 million people have died in the ongoing conflict in the DRC in the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide. In October of 2010, the United Nations released a report documenting human rights violations in the DRC in 1996 and 1997, asserting that invading Rwandan troops and their rebel allies killed tens of thousands of Hutu, including many civilians. Some of those accused are members of the Rwandan government who have condemned their accusations. However, violence in the Congo continues to this day. The big takeaway from the Rwandan genocide is that history is always repeating itself. We see genocide happening throughout history with the Armenians, with the Holocaust, with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. History repeats itself, and humans do not end up learning their lessons.